We're in Honolulu. Why didn't you come to the airport yesterday, sweetie? My mother's syrupy voice drifted through the phone, so painfully fake it made my stomach turn. I stood frozen in the middle of Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport, my suitcase at my side, while reality slowly crashed down on me. They had lied. They had deliberately given me the wrong flight date. My name is Joselyn Adams, and I never thought my own parents would betray me like this. I had been looking forward to this family vacation for months, a much-needed break after an exhausting quarter at work. As a marketing executive managing some of our firm's biggest accounts, I'd just wrapped up hosting a delegation of international clients. This trip was supposed to be my reward, a chance to finally relax and reconnect with my family. "What do you mean yesterday?" I said, my voice trembling. "You told me the flight was today at 2 p.m. I have the text messages to prove it." The lively hum of the airport, families laughing, couples snapping photos, groups heading off on adventures, felt like knives twisting deeper into my chest. Everyone was going somewhere, except me. "Oh, sweetie, there must have been some confusion," my mom cooed, the fake sympathy practically dripping from her lips. "Your sister made it just fine. We're all here at the resort now. You wouldn't believe the view." Of course Amy made it. Amy always made it. My younger sister, the family's golden child, the star they could never stop bragging about. I should have known something was off the moment they insisted on handling the flight bookings themselves. My parents, who couldn't even navigate their own Wi-Fi settings, suddenly wanted to manage the whole itinerary. I should have seen it coming. "This wasn't a mix-up," I said, my voice steadier now, anger rising to the surface. "You gave me the wrong date on purpose. You never wanted me on this trip, did you?" There was silence. Then, "Now, Jocelyn, don't be so dramatic. Mistakes happen." I hung up before she could say another word. My hand shook, but not from sadness, from rage. I stood there in the middle of the terminal, watching other families embrace, excited for their vacations, while I stood alone. The same parents who relied on me to help pay their mortgage, their utilities, even their medical bills. They had cut me out of the family trip I had helped fund. My phone buzzed with a message. A photo from Amy. She was sprawled on a beach chair, drink in hand, my parents beside her, all smiles. "Family vacation begins. Missing you, sis. Wish you could have made it." The fake sympathy, the audacity, it was like a slap across the face. That's when something inside me snapped. This wasn't just about a missed flight. This was about years, decades, of being treated like a second-class citizen in my own family. And right there, standing beneath the fluorescent airport lights, I decided I was done. I've spent my whole life wondering if my parents even saw me as their daughter, or if I was just their personal ATM. Growing up, Amy was the sun my parents orbited around. Her dance recitals, her soccer games, her straight A's, they were my parents' entire world. I learned how to stay quiet, stay small, and take whatever scraps of attention were left over. But after college, I carved out my own path. I worked my way up the corporate ladder, trading weekends and holidays for promotions and bonuses. I built a career, a life, and stability my parents never noticed, unless they needed money. When my dad retired early because of his arthritis, after draining their savings funding Amy's acting career, guess who stepped in to cover the bills? For the last 2 years, I'd been sending them $2,000 a month to cover their mortgage, groceries, medications, everything they couldn't afford because they'd spent their retirement chasing Amy's pipe dreams. Last year alone, I gave them over $30,000, money I'd been saving for a down payment on my own home. "We're so lucky to have such a generous daughter," my mom would say on our weekly calls, right before launching into a 20-minute monologue about Amy's latest audition. They never asked about my job, my life, my successes. Unless they wanted money, I might as well have been invisible. So when they floated the idea of a family trip to Hawaii, I thought, for once, it could be different. Maybe they were finally ready to include me, to spend time together like a normal family. I even transferred extra money to their account to help cover the resort, thrilled at the idea of sunset dinners and lazy beach days with the people I still wanted so desperately to love me. Instead, they took my money and left me behind. I scrolled through old messages as I stood in baggage claim, the pattern suddenly so clear. My mother's text, flights at 2 p.m. on the 15th. Amy's Instagram story, their boarding passes dated the 14th. They hadn't just accidentally left me behind, they planned it. Oh, my phone rang again, my father this time. Joselyn, he started, his voice deep and condescending. Your mother's very upset. You're blowing this out of proportion. It was a simple mix-up. You're being childish. I almost laughed. Was it a mix-up when you made sure Amy had the right flight info? When you took my money for a trip you knew I wouldn't be on? When you let me plan my entire work schedule around fake dates? My dad sighed heavily. You know how things get. Your sister's been so stressed lately. We thought it would be easier this way. There it was. The truth. This isn't about a mistake, I said quietly. It's about you not wanting me there. Again. Now you listen here, he started, but I wasn't finished. No, Dad, you listen. I just checked my bank app. Remember the $3,000 I sent you last week to help with this trip? That was my money. You took my money, left me behind, and now you're gaslighting me into thinking it's my fault. That ends today. Silence. Joselyn, he said, trying to soften his tone, we're on a fixed income. We needed that money to make the trip special. You're doing so well, you can afford to help your family. That's what family does. The audacity took my breath away. Family doesn't lie. Family doesn't steal. Family doesn't treat one child like a bank and the other like royalty. You've changed, he snapped. Money's made you cold. No, Dad. Money showed me the truth. I hung up, and right there, I made my decision. The bank of Joselyn was permanently closed. The drive home was a blur of rage, grief, and strange relief. That night, I gathered everything. Every bank transfer, every receipt, every Venmo request labeled just this once. I built a spreadsheet of every dollar I'd sent them in the last 2 years. The total? $47,800. That was the price of their love. The next morning, I closed the joint account I used to send them money. Then I called HR and removed my parents from my life insurance policy. With every step, I felt lighter. That's when the texts started. Mum, I can't believe you're doing this to us. You're breaking my heart. Amy. OMG, you're being so dramatic. It was just a mistake. Grow up. Dad. We need your help with Mum's prescriptions. Don't you dare abandon your family. I stared at my phone, heart pounding, then I drafted a reply. Dear Mom, Dad, and Amy, effective immediately, I am cutting off all financial support. You will need to figure out your expenses without me. Do not contact me for money again. I need space to decide if this relationship is worth saving. And with that, I blocked them all. That was only the beginning. The room blurred for a moment, but not from tears, from the sheer force of clarity crashing down on me all at once. The requests for more money, the vague excuses, the guilt trips when I dared to ask questions. It wasn't just manipulation, it was fraud, plain and simple. My phone vibrated, another text from my mother. Please, sweetie, we need to talk. Your father's having chest pains from all this stress. If anything happens to him, it'll be your fault. I turned the screen to Rose, my father's sister, the only person in my family who had shown me even a shred of honesty lately. She read it, shook her head, and sighed. "Classic," she said. "They're panicking because they know their house of cards is collapsing, and they're trying to drag you down with it. What should I do?" My voice was quieter than I wanted it to be. Rose folded her hands on the table. "You've got two options. You can press charges for the identity theft, and you'd be well within your rights. Or you can handle this privately with clear boundaries and consequences. Either way, you need to cut off their financial lifeline. The weight of years, decades, settled onto my shoulders. Every dream I had quietly shelved, every savings goal I'd sacrificed, every financial decision I made to ensure they were okay, on it all while they spent my money and lied to my face. The tears, the guilt trips, the constant crises, it had all been part of the game. I want to talk to them," I said, the words surprising even me. "Face to face, but only if you're there." Rose nodded. "I'll make it happen, but first, we lock down your credit. You freeze your accounts. They've shown you exactly who they are, Joselyn. Believe them." That night, I didn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying the last decade of my life. The promotions I skipped because they needed help with the mortgage. The vacations I never took because Amy needed money for auditions. The down payment I drained so they wouldn't lose the house. They hadn't just taken my money, they'd stolen my sense of self, but for the first time in my adult life, the fog lifted. There was no more room for denial, no more space for hoping they'd change. All that was left was a sharp, cold resolve. They wanted to play games, fine, but this time I would set the rules. The confrontation was set for Saturday afternoon at Rose's house. I spent the morning with a lawyer, reviewing my options for pressing charges. Then I put together a folder. Every bank transfer, every credit card statement, every text message that painted the full picture of their betrayal. The stack was thick enough to feel heavy in my hands. When my parents arrived, Amy was with them. She looked nothing like the golden child from their vacation photos, her shoulders slumped, her face pale. She didn't know what was coming. None of them did. They filed into Rose's living room like children called to the principal's office, forced smiles plastered across their faces. "Thank you for coming," I said, my voice steady. "There are some things I've discovered, and they need to be addressed." "Joselyn?" My mother started, her voice already trembling with rehearsed tears. "Before you say anything, we just need you to understand." "No," I cut her off. "This is my turn to talk." I opened the folder and pulled out the first page, the fraudulent credit card statement. I held it up like evidence in court. Would anyone like to explain this? My father's face went white. Amy looked genuinely confused. My mother's panic kicked into overdrive. It was an emergency," she stammered. "We were going to tell you. Eventually." "An emergency?" I flipped through more pages, their extravagant purchases, their casino withdrawals, payments for the luxury items I'd never even heard about. Like the gambling debt? Or the maxed out credit cards? Or maybe Amy's acting career? Amy sat up straighter. "What do you mean? What about my acting career?" I turned to her directly. "They've been telling me for years that you're in California, chasing your acting dreams. That's where all my money was supposedly going. Your rent, your classes, your headshots." "What?" Her face crumpled in confusion. "I've been living at home this whole time, working at Starbucks. They told me you refused to help with tuition, and that you didn't care about me." For a moment no one spoke. Amy's eyes filled with tears as realization dawned. Years of lies unraveling in real time. The silence was shattered by my father slamming his hand on the table. "We did what we had to do," he roared, his voice full of self-righteousness. "You don't understand the pressure we've been under." "No." I said quietly. I understand perfectly. I pulled out the final document, the printout from my credit report showing the fraudulent credit card in my name. This is identity theft, I said, my voice like steel. It's a federal crime. I have two options: press charges or handle this privately. It's up to you. My mother's tears dried instantly, replaced with stunned silence. You wouldn't, she whispered. We're your parents. Parents, Rose cut in sharply, don't steal from their children. Parents don't lie, manipulate, and commit fraud. Suddenly, my father clutched his chest. My heart, he gasped, stumbling to the side. I need help. Call an ambulance. For a split second, the old Joselyn almost reacted, but then I caught the flicker in my mother's eyes. Calculation, not panic. No, I said, my voice firm. No more manipulation. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to sign a repayment agreement for every cent you stole. You're going to close that fraudulent credit card, and you're going to stay out of my life. And if we don't? My father asked, his heart attack suddenly forgotten. Then I press charges, I said calmly, and you can explain it all to a judge. The room fell silent. I held my breath, waiting. Then, finally, my father's shoulders slumped in defeat. My mother said nothing, staring at the floor. Amy just sat there, eyes darting between them and me, seeing it all clearly for the first time. They signed the agreement my lawyer had prepared, reluctantly, bitterly, but they signed. And as they did, I didn't feel triumph, just a deep, hollow sadness for the family I thought I had. In the weeks that followed, their house of lies collapsed completely. Without my money, they were forced to sell their house and move into a small rental apartment. The repayment agreement devoured most of their retirement income, not out of revenge, but out of justice. Amy moved in with Rose temporarily. One evening, she called me, her voice quiet. I had no idea what they were doing, she said. They spent years turning us against each other. I'm sorry, Joselyn. Her apology mattered, but it couldn't erase everything. Still, it was a start. My parents made one final attempt to manipulate me. They showed up at my office, causing a scene in the lobby. My mother wailed loud enough for my co-workers to hear tears streaming down her face. We'll lose everything, she cried. After all we've sacrificed for you, how could you do this to your own family? I stood at the top of the stairs, looking down at them, two strangers I no longer recognized. You didn't sacrifice for me, I said, my voice calm but unshakable. You sacrificed me. Security escorted them out. That was the day I stopped being their daughter and started being my own person. I stood my ground, surrounded by concerned colleagues, the murmurs of the office swirling around me. My parents stood at the building's entrance, still pleading, still performing for anyone who would listen. But I wasn't playing their game anymore. You didn't lose the house, I said, my voice steady and clear. You lost me. That's the only loss that matters. And it was your choice. Security escorted them out, their protests echoing down the hall. I didn't chase after them. I didn't feel the old pang of guilt or responsibility tugging at my chest. There was no more doubt, no more wondering if I'd done the right thing. All I felt was peace. A profound, quiet peace I hadn't known I was capable of. I was no longer their ATM, their emotional punching bag, or their backup plan. That evening, in my quiet apartment, I opened my laptop and booked a trip to Hawaii. For me. No compromises, no last-minute cancellations, no guilt. The irony wasn't lost on me. They had gone to such great lengths to exclude me from their dream vacation, and in doing so, they gave me something far better. Freedom. 3 months later, I stood on the soft sands of a Maui beach, my toes sinking into the warmth as waves lapped gently at the shore. The sky was on fire, streaked with brilliant oranges, soft pinks, and deepening purples. The beauty of it all left me breathless, not just from the scenery, but from the realization that I was finally, truly here, present, whole, at peace. This wasn't the family vacation I had imagined, but it was exactly the trip I needed. No forced smiles, no walking on eggshells, no wondering if I was enough. Just me, the ocean breeze, and the freedom to exist on my own terms. My phone buzzed in my beach bag, the only message that mattered. It was from Rose. They're finally moving out of the house this weekend, she wrote. Amy's enrolled in community college. She's asking if you'd be open to grabbing coffee when you're back. I stared at the message for a long moment, feeling the salt air curl around me like a hug. Amy, the sister I'd spent a lifetime resenting and envying in equal measure, was finally standing on her own, no longer the puppet in our parents' production. Tell her I'm open to it, I replied, the words light, without bitterness. Maybe Amy and I had a chance to rewrite our story, one without lies, standing between us. The repayment plan my parents had reluctantly agreed to was moving forward, slowly but surely. Every month, a check arrived, stripped of affection or apology, just the cold necessity of consequence. They didn't pay me back because they were sorry. They paid me back because they knew if they didn't, those carefully documented fraud charges would rise from the file I kept, like a sleeping giant. The power dynamic had shifted permanently. They no longer controlled me with guilt or emotional blackmail. Every passive-aggressive email they sent, from increasingly obscure accounts after I blocked the old ones, landed in the trash unread. We're eating ramen noodles while you're living in luxury. Is this what you wanted? I didn't even flinch as I hit delete. At work, the energy I used to spend smoothing over their chaos now went into my clients and my team. That energy was returned tenfold. My career flourished in ways I never imagined possible. With no family drama to drain me, I was sharper, clearer, and finally recognized. Another promotion. My name on projects I used to only dream about. I even started looking at houses again, something I hadn't allowed myself to do in years. I used to believe buying my own home was selfish. How could I justify that while my parents struggled? Now I knew better. They had never truly struggled. They'd simply lived beyond their means, confident I would always clean up their mess. Not anymore. Standing at the water's edge, I let the last tendrils of guilt dissolve into the sea foam. I had carried my parents' burdens for so long, I hadn't realized how much lighter I could feel without them. I wasn't abandoning my family. I was saving myself. I thought about the girl I used to be, the one who believed if she was just good enough, generous enough, responsible enough, they would finally see her, love her, choose her. But that girl didn't exist anymore. In her place stood a woman who had saved herself, who chose herself. Sometimes happy endings don't come with forgiveness or dramatic reconciliations. Sometimes the happiest endings are the quiet ones, the ones where you walk away and finally realize you were enough all along. The trip they planned to break me was the trip that set me free. I turned my face toward the sun, smiling into the warmth. My story wasn't theirs anymore. It was mine, and for the first time, I couldn't wait to see what came next.